Alright guys, welcome back to Jerky's Backyard Shenanigans. So today we are working on the electronic door, window, and lock conversion. So I've got the door pretty well stripped out, got the window out, got the regulator out. Now let me show you pretty much what we're doing here. Already got one of these done. So I took the manual window regulator, I popped the spring out of it, I took the manual crank piece out of it. Now I left this piece alone. I just cut a notch so that way I could take the 87 window regulator and I'm going to cut it right here, and then I'm going to notch the manual window regulator and I'm going to weld all the way around that and make sure that we got a decent amount of gear contact. But I've already tested this, it does work. We don't have any weird binding issues or nothing. And I've taken it upon myself to weld some nuts on the back of it. So it should go back in with some 1/4-inch bolts and some pretty hefty washers. And we'll have electric windows. Now the electric door lock actuators I'm gonna have to build a bracket for, so I'll show you guys how to do that when I get to that point, but essentially that's where we're at right now. And then when I get the other passenger side window regulator out, I'll show you how I splice the two of them together. Alright guys, so we got the whole driver's side window assembled. It's all back together. Now the screws for the window regulator are an oddball size. It's like a I think 12 by 24 machine screw, so I'm having a little difficulty finding it, but just to put it together for right now, I've got two 1/4-inch bolts holding in the window regulator on the bottom, and I've welded the nut to the actual regulator so I don't have to try to hold that as I'm removing it all. So what I'm gonna have to do, I'm gonna have to lightly fix the little oblong piece that goes into the actual window motor. Once I get that figured out, I'll put another screw there. Now the driver's side window harness has a ground, so I fished that through and then self-tapered it into the actual door panel, and then I cut a hole so that way we can fish our window switches through and then put them into the door panel. Now putting it the way I did, it fits real good. So the window motor is all tucked behind there, and we have room for our speaker on the actual arc of the window regulator. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to build a bracket for our lock actuator, so we can plug in the lock actuator and have the whole conversion done essentially. But as you can see, it looks like it's gonna work pretty well. I've already tested it. The window does go up and down. I don't have the harness actually plugged in, so I had to jump the window motor by itself, but it goes up and down smooth, so that's really all we need. So I'll show you guys what we have to do on the passenger side. Alright guys, so to remove the original window regulator, you have 3 rivets. What you want to do is you want to drill it out, and then the rivet will separate. Then once that's all separated, your window regulator is free from the actual door. Now you have 3 Phillips screws for the wing window, and then 1 7/16 bolt for that. So once you loosen this up and loosen these 3 up, this will move. So it's pretty much a game of kind of tilt it and make it come out, and then you'll have to pull these felt strips out to actually get the window out of the door. And once all that is out, you'll be able to modify the window regulator, and I'll show you how we do that. Now to make room for the switches, I've drilled 4 holes where I want my switches in the window or in the door, and then I'm going to take a scroll saw with a metal blade I'm going to cut this window out, and then we'll be able to fish our switches through. Now, in order to actually move the window harness through the door, we'll have to depin this connector, and we're going to leave the vehicle side of the connector intact for now, so that way we know which wires go where. And then they will go through this hole right here, as well as this hole right here. And then finally, they will fish through this big hole right here. And we'll want our connector right around here, similar to the other side. Now, the harness is a lot longer on the 87 than it is fitting in the 79, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to cut it right around here and right here, and then we're going to splice it back together, so that way we don't have about 2 feet of wire just hanging down. And then once all that's done, we'll be able to hook up our window motor as well as our door lock actuator. But first, we're going to have to disassemble all this, and then we'll have to actually pull the door side of the window track out, and it should just be these two 7/16 bolts, and it will pop out. And we'll take a piece of slotted steel, cut it, fish a bolt through for our door lock actuator, and then we will weld the other side to the window track so it doesn't interfere with the window. Fairly simple, but is pretty extensive as far as the modifying goes. Again, this vehicle was never designed to have this, and these parts were never designed to fit in this vehicle, so it's just the name of the game. Alright guys, so we got the door track side of the window tracks out. Now what we're going to do to adapt the lock actuators, so I cut a piece of this off, roughly in about this shape. Now we're going to weld it to the track right there, and then that will come out something like this, and then this slotted hole right here is what we're actually going to bolt the door lock actuator to. And it should be strong enough, so we'll see how she holds up. Alright guys, so this is what we're left with. As you can see, the door lock actuator bolts right onto that bracket that we just welded on, and then this rod actually goes into this door mechanism that pulls this down and up. So we're going to get this fished in there, and that should do it as far as that goes. Alright, now let me show you the window. Now, we are going to have to replace our window track linings because they are pretty non-existent, but it works. And it's not too bad for something I pulled out of the junkyard and welded together. So I think once we get that all done, it'll be nice and smooth, and then everything lined up, it'll work great. But yeah, we got electric locks and windows now. Alright guys, so I got the original manual crank regulator out of the door. Now we're gonna have to pop this spring off. It's got quite a bit of tension to it, so definitely want to watch yourself when you do that. And then we're gonna have to drill out these 3 rivets to get the actual crank portion out of it. And once we get all that out, I'll show the cutting. Alright guys, so I got the manual window regulator cut. Pretty much just notched it right about where the teeth start. And this is what I took out of it. And we're gonna take the electronic one out of the 87. We're gonna cut it right at this edge. And once we get all that cut, we're gonna weld it right in this area, so that way the window motor faces out. It's pretty much gonna sit over this piece. Alright guys, so I got the piece cut off from the 87 window regulator. It's gonna look something like this. Now you're gonna want a notch right here as well as right here to make sure that our engagement is good with the gear. Now pretty much on this, I'm shooting for 3/4 of a tooth of engagement. That seems to work on the other one, so that's what we're gonna do. Now, the window motor itself, these are the 3 mounting holes. Now this hole has a screw in it. You're going to want to remove that screw so that way it doesn't interfere with the gear side on the window regulator. And this top hole right here, I'm going to tap that out to a 6mm thread pitch so that way we can secure the window regulator on the top side, because these screws are that oddball size, so that makes it easier. And then we're actually going to line up this hole right here, this top hole right here, so that way the window regulator and the motor are secured by that one screw. Alright, so our window regulator is going to sit something like that. Try to get that hole lined up nice and good, and our engagement seems alright, and we're wanting this piece to sit pretty much parallel with this piece, so that way we're not worrying about the window motor cocking and wearing funny. Now this is galvanized steel, so if you do this yourself, make sure you're welding it in a fairly well ventilated area, because it'll turn green and do all kinds of weird stuff, but it does hold together. And then after we get all this welded together, we'll have to notch, so that way we can get a tool in to put these screws back in. Now the way I do this is I pretty much just tack in the plate with the motor in there to make sure our engagement's good, and then after I get the tacks done, I'll pull the motor off and I'll finish welding it from there. Alright, so essentially this is what we're going after. Welded it all around the inside, welded these 2 ears, and then did some welds on the back side. This is what I was talking about, welding the galvanized. It does some really weird funky stuff, but it holds together. Alright guys, so this is what it looks like with the window motor in there. You can see there's really no room for that screw to live, so that's why we remove it. And then notch those 2 right there. And then this, our bolt will actually go through the door, through this, and then into the window motor, and kind of sandwich all that together. Now I'm sure you could probably put a sleeve there so it doesn't crush, but we're gonna see how it works without it. And if we got to revisit this, we'll revisit it and improve upon it. Alright guys, so we got the door all back together, we got the window in it. So pretty much she's done as far as all that goes. Now we're gonna take some clips, we're gonna secure our wire to the inside of the door panel, make sure that the window doesn't snag on those. Got our hole cut out for our window switches, and then we've got our speaker wires extended. And then we took a piece of plastic conduit, wrapped our wires where they go between the doors, so that way we don't have to deal with them pinching or nothing like that. Now all 3 of our bolts are in, all that's all set up. Now all we got to do is pop the door panel on, after we put our speaker in, and then pretty much all set as far as the window conversion goes. So let me show you. I've got it hooked up now. So it's functional. So let me finish a couple things up, and then I'll show you guys the door locks when I swap the lead. Alright guys, so I pretty much got it all buttoned up. Let me show you the final result. So this is what we got going on for the door. I'll have to show you guys in better lighting later, but essentially window goes down, window goes down over there, just like that. Swap our leads over real fast, and just like that, we got electric locks and windows in this 79 Bronco. I haven't seen too many of them done this way, but I'm pretty excited with the final result. Like, this is pretty cool. Definitely looking forward to be able to go down the road and actually roll down the passenger side window and roll it back up without leaning over halfway through the truck. But I'll show you guys more later, but appreciate it.